Many years ago, in a bustling city called Aba, there lived a prosperous man named Amari. Amari was a prominent fabric dealer and was highly regarded throughout the city, even beyond. His rise to success was nothing short of a rags to riches story. As the only child of his poor parents, he had lived a life of hardship and struggle. But through sheer determination, hard work, and a little bit of luck, he managed to lift himself out of poverty and build a name for himself. Amari made a vow that his wife and children would never suffer in the way he did growing up. His love for his family was undeniable, and he showered them with everything they could ever want. His wife Zuri was a beautiful woman, and together they had twin daughters, NIA and Irima. Amari doted on his daughters, and he spared no expense in making sure they wanted for nothing. He often indulged them with treats, and their lives were filled with luxury and abundance. NIA and Irima ate excessively, often snacking from the moment they woke up until they went to bed. Their meals were lavish, often including a 3-course breakfast followed by snacks throughout the day. They were always eating, and at times, they even indulged in unhealthy foods like ice cream and cakes. Their lifestyle was one of excess, with little attention given to their health or well-being. Amari's wealth allowed them to live in a world where their desires were constantly fulfilled, with servants attending to their every need. Amari and Zuri saw nothing wrong with this indulgence. To them, it was a sign of their success, a reflection of the wealth Amari had worked so hard to build. When friends and family advised them to stop overfeeding their daughters, Amari would brush off their concerns with pride, stating, "If my daughters are not fat, how will people know that I am successful?" Zuri, on the other hand, saw their overindulgence as a manifestation of her husband's love, and she would defend him fiercely against any criticism. However, as the years passed, NIA and Irima began to face challenges of their own. At school, their peers began to mock them because of their size. They were ridiculed with cruel songs and teasing, which affected their self-esteem. Though they had been raised with every material comfort, their emotional well-being began to deteriorate as they faced bullying and rejection. The lack of romantic attention from boys only added to their sadness, and they began to question their worth. They turned to their parents for comfort, telling them how they felt. Their father, Amari, reassured them with confidence, saying, "Do not worry, my daughters. Your father's wealth will ensure that you are never alone. Many men will line up to marry you. If no one asks for your hand in marriage, I will buy a husband for you." His words were meant to be comforting, but deep down, NIA and Irima knew that something was wrong. The more they tried to fit into the world around them, the more they felt like outsiders in their own lives. Despite their academic success, both girls graduated with top honors from university. Amari insisted that they not work, promising them a life of luxury without the need to lift a finger. He provided them with allowances, salaries, and everything they needed to live comfortably. But as the years passed, NIA and Irima's weight continued to rise, and their lives were spent eating, watching television, and avoiding the outside world. They no longer had many friends, and their social lives had all but disappeared. As the girls grew older, they realized that their father's wealth would not shield them from the harsh realities of life forever. No matter how much money they had, no one was showing any interest in them romantically. NIA and Irima, now in their mid-30s, were beginning to feel the weight of their years. both literally and figuratively. They were still unmarried, still overweight, and still struggling with the feelings of worthlessness that had plagued them for so long. Amari tried numerous times to arrange marriages for his daughters, even going so far as to attempt matchmaking with his friends' sons. However, each time he introduced his daughters, the response was the same: rejection. One of his best friends, Carlos, had a son named Kofi who had been living in the United States for over a decade. Amari invited Kofi over, hoping he would be interested in one of his daughters. But when Kofi laid eyes on Nia and Irima, he recoiled in shock, exclaiming, "Jesus, are these your daughters? I could never date them, even if I were going through a mental breakdown." He wasn't surprised. He had encountered similar reactions before, and his heart began to break for his daughters. He knew that his friends were gossiping behind his back about how his daughters had turned out, mocking them for their weight and questioning his parenting choices. Nia and Irima, devastated by the rejection, sought comfort in food, the only source of solace they could find. Years passed, and Nia and Irima remained trapped in the cycle of overeating, guilt, and sadness. They tried various diets and even hired a personal trainer, but nothing seemed to work. Every time they made progress, they would fall back into old habits, unable to escape the pattern of indulgence and emotional eating. Despite their efforts, they remained stuck in the same situation, unhappy, overweight, and with no way out. One day, Amari had a new plan. He decided to offer a substantial prize to any of his employees who would agree to marry his daughters. He called a meeting with his supervisors, Obi, Endu, and Nana, and announced, "I am offering 25% of my business to the man who will marry either of my daughters. In addition, I will build a mansion for you and give you 25 million naira." The supervisors were shocked. They had never heard of such an offer, but they quickly began to discuss it among themselves. Some of the men were hesitant, disgusted by the idea of marrying the girls due to their size. Others saw it as an opportunity to get rich quick. Endu and Obi, who saw the financial benefits, agreed to the proposal, even though they had no intention of truly loving Nia and Irima. They knew they would be able to live comfortably and continue their own lives without much effort. Months later, both Nia and Irima were married off to Endu and Obi, respectively. Their weddings were grand affairs, full of pomp and circumstance, but deep down, Nia and Irima felt like they were trapped in a life they didn't choose. They were married to men who saw them as nothing more than a financial transaction, and their lives were far from the fairy tale they had hoped for. Tragedy struck when Amari passed away unexpectedly. His death left Nia, Irima, and Zuri devastated. The family had relied so heavily on him for protection and support that they didn't know how to survive without him. Endu and Obi, who had promised to care for Nia and Irima, quickly showed their true colors. Endu began to taunt his wife, Nia, calling her disgusting and mocking her weight. Obi too treated Irima poorly, never showing any affection and always making her feel like an afterthought. As the weeks passed, both women became more and more unhappy in their marriages. Nia and Irima were both trapped in loveless relationships, and their husbands made it clear that they were only there for the wealth. Nia, feeling betrayed and hopeless, began to reflect on the life her father had given her. She realized that while he had tried to protect her, he had also contributed to her misery by overindulging her and enabling unhealthy habits. Determined to take control of her life, Nia began working on herself. She started exercising and making healthier food choices. Her husband, Endu, mocked her at first, but Nia was resolute. She would not let herself fall victim to the same fate as her sister, Irima. Nia's transformation was slow but steady. As she began to lose weight and regain her self-confidence, she felt a sense of empowerment she had never experienced before. Nia's transformation had a profound impact on her relationship with Endu. He began to show genuine affection for her and apologize for his previous behavior. The couple began to enjoy each other's company again, and Nia began to feel like the woman she had always wanted to be. However, Nia had another plan in mind. While she was focusing on her health and rebuilding her self-esteem, she also began to take a closer look at her father's business and the contracts her father had left behind. Nia realized that her father's business was still under the control of Endu and Obi, and she decided to take action. She carefully studied the contracts and discovered a loophole that allowed her to regain control of the 25% stake that her father had left for them. With determination, she orchestrated a legal transfer of her father's assets back to her. And in a series of calculated moves, she secured the wealth that rightfully belonged to her. When she confronted Endu and Obi, they were shocked and furious. But Nia was not deterred. She had worked hard to reclaim what was rightfully hers, and now it was time for her to take charge of her life. She filed the police report and had both men removed from her father's business. Nia's resolve and courage allowed her to take back control and move forward with her life. Though Nia had suffered greatly, she found a new sense of peace. She was finally able to live her life on her terms, free from the constraints of her past. Nia eventually met a man named Uku, and they fell in love. They got married, and Nia found happiness in a way she never thought possible. As for Endu and Obi, they faced the consequences of their actions. They had squandered the wealth they had been given, and were now left struggling to make ends meet. Nia, however, was content knowing that she had taken control of her future and had learned valuable lessons along the way. I hope you enjoyed Nia's story and learned something from her journey, from how too much comfort affected her life to how she changed for the better. There's a lot to think about. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Yu's transformation and what we can all learn from her story. Stay tuned for more videos and take care. See you next time.